Folks, we got some information about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI and SSDI. Now, the leaders of a group have announced that they will be extending the oil production cuts, and there will likely be a big spike in the oil production. Now, as gas prices remain flat, the group of oil-producing nations decided to extend oil production through 2024, and now it extends this program for many other countries. Since the Biden administration and lawmakers will have to make a big decision this month on whether the Americans should return and have a repayment on debt. Top economists are warning that this is a decision that could greatly affect the current state of the economy. It may even cause inflation to increase. Student loan payments are resuming this year, but it's likely going to hurt the economy, not just the borrowers. In March 2020, the former president actually gave out stimulus checks. Now, once again, the most recent extension is that the education secretary will be passing a student loan debt relief program. Biden also agreed to codify the end of the student loan payment pause and the debt ceiling deal that he reached with Kevin McCarthy, suggesting the president did not deem additional relief necessary for borrowers this year in connection with the crisis. Some economists think the country should start even preparing for an economic strain once the payments resume, but the Education Department previously estimated that the pause put about an extra $5 billion back into borrowers' bank pockets, giving them more economic freedom to not only buy a car, house, or big other expense, but to also leave their jobs in pursuit of better opportunities. Finding disruption. I'm hopeful we can get to $3.49 between Halloween and Thanksgiving. He also added that there's an outside chance the national average reaches a low of $3.29. There's no major hurricane in the Gulf Coast or more refinery outages. However, analysts also warned the decline could slow temporarily and even turn higher in some areas like California and the Midwest. Prices were already rising recently in those areas as well. The least expensive states for gas are in the South. Drivers are paying an average of $3.26 for a gallon of gas in Texas and Arkansas, and some states continue to see much higher prices like California, where the average is $5.26 a gallon, and Nevada at $4.84. The U.S. exported nearly 10 million barrels of oil and refined products last week, according to U.S. Energy Information Administration. Exports of gas totaled 1 million barrels a day for the week. Everybody, Joe Biden's new Inflation Act is now offering up to $14,000 in additional financial assistance to many low-income families. There are over 70 Democratic lawmakers that are urging Congress to step up to the plate and pass legislation that would actually prevent a government shutdown. Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act on climate change is helping many Americans reduce their carbon footprint. A key element in that push is offering up to $14,000 in rebates and tax credits for people to make their homes more energy efficient. Those benefits can be used to lower the cost of home upgrades, ranging from installing heat pumps to buying new electric purchases and like stoves and dryers. About 40% of carbon emissions stems from buildings, and so these incentives can actually help the U.S. achieve its goal of lowering fossil fuel emissions. According to experts, this gives people some very concrete and generous incentives to do that, both in the form of tax credits and direct cash rebates. CBS News has said that it is the biggest federal investment in buildings ever, at least one that is specified for climate change. There are two separate rebate programs. The Homes Rebate Program provides more than $4 billion in states to help residents make their entire home more energy efficient, and the program provides rebate based on the energy savings they upgrade their home in. And now, for instance, homeowners that make changes that cut their energy usage by at least 35% can get up to $4,000 in rebates. That amount is doubled for low and middle income households who can get $8,000 in rebates. High Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Act provides rebate for low and middle income families to electrify their home, like installing heat pumps or electric clothes dryers. The per household rebate is capped at $14,000, and households cannot receive two rebates for the same upgrade. The Homes Rebate Program would cover upgrades from solar panels to new windows that help your home become more energy efficient. The other program designates rebates for specific appliances and purchases and other upgrades. One of the consumers and one of the most appealing rebates is a provision that is offering up to $8,000 for heat pumps, and this provides air and conditioning as heating.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in March, the SEC proposed a climate risk disclosure rule that takes a big step toward increasing the efficiency of the economy and of financial markets. by requiring companies to inform investors about the climate-related risks that affect their businesses. Now, as part of this rule, the SEC proposes that companies disclose their greenhouse gas emissions, and a company's emissions are classified into 3 different categories called scopes. So, Chair Gensler, just so we can set a baseline here, let's run through an example. Let's say I'm Exxon. My Scope 1 emissions would be from things like my company's vehicles and methane leaks that occur at the wellhead of the wells that I own. Scope 2.
And important, the law reduces inflation and it reduces the deficit. And as the leader said, it is fully paid for by making the biggest companies and the wealthiest pay their fair share. Under the president's leadership, and with the stroke of President Biden's pen, we have achieved a monumental victory for America's working families. Indeed,
As of July, the interest rate rose from 4 to 4.5%, and as a result, the Federal Reserve's recent decision to raise the federal funds rate. There are also some new changes coming to the IRS. The Inflation Reduction Act, recently signed by Joe Biden, has many people asking about what this means for their taxes. The legislation provides $80 billion to the IRS, with more than half of the new dollars, everybody, going toward additional tax enforcement. This new money is allocated to help fund the IRS so they can do their job and get taxpayers the refunds more quickly after they file. According to the Treasury Department, the funding will allow the IRS to roughly hire 87,000 workers over the next 10 years. And now with the midterms in November, the 50-50 Senate returns to Washington with a must-pass legislation on its plate, requiring bipartisan cooperation just as political tensions hit their peak. Chief among them is the priorities for Congress this month, like funding the government to avert a shutdown. There is a $2,000 Ford stimulus check. Top economists are pushing for Congress to do this, send out checks immediately, to all Social Security recipients, that is. And the Social Security is a program that is responsible for pulling close to 22.5 million people out of poverty every single year. So we all know it's a very important program that people need and people desperately need it. This year's soaring inflation rate likely means that the 2023 COLA for Social Security beneficiaries will be the highest in decades, with one senior advocacy group estimating that the 2023 COLA could push above 10%. And this should be good news for retirees who are having a hard time making the ends meet. The reasons is that a sharp 2023 COLA increase would push some Social Security beneficiaries into a higher tax bracket. Increasing their tax liability, that means you pay more taxes. According to Yahoo News, the Senior Citizens League estimates that the COLA for 2023 will be 10.5%. And based on inflation numbers, showing that the Consumer Price Index in June rose 9.1% year over year. A 10.5% COLA hike would increase the current average retiree benefit of $1,600 by $175.10. Tens of thousands of retirees who have not paid taxes on their benefits in the past may not have to start doing so in 2023. So higher incomes can also lead to a loss of income-adjusted Medicare health and prescription benefits for low-income beneficiaries, as well as reduced SNAP. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell